Well, hello folks, and welcome to episode 165 of Retro Power Uncut. And you join me in the blast chamber alongside the Churchill Mark II Jaguar Coupe project, which, as you'll notice, is not completely blasted. And we've had somewhat of an eventful day. We started the day bright and early, and at about 7:45 a.m. we were getting towards being set up for blasting this. It was a pretty cold night last night, about -3, -4 degrees C, I think. So it was a good old cold start for the diesel compressor. That was the old girl. She's older than me, and I'm fairly old. So that was a good smoky start for the old Ford Dorset engine in that. But we got that fired up, and Rich cracked on and got 95% of the way through blasting this. And then we lost our main three-phase power connection to the grid, which is a bit of a problem. We had an underground power failure of one of the phases. So we've got two phases still running. So we've got some lights and various things operational, but we have no three-phase power. So we couldn't complete work on this because we need compressed air to feed although we've got the big compressor which runs the blaster, we run the breathing air for the compressor the breathing air is done from our workshop compressor, which can't run, and also our dust extraction can't run, and a whole variety of other things that need three-phase power can't run. So we've had to stop that, and that's most irritating because the chain of events in that process pretty much relies on everything going in order. We've mentioned it before, but I'll just briefly go through it. We would grip blast the car using this crushed glass that you can see around me, which is principally crushed bottle. That's recycled bottles. A lot of your bottles, when you take them to the bottle bank, end up being used by us for blasting cars. Crushed bottle glass from your friendly local recycling bin ends up going through a mill up at our supplier, Stacey Processing, up in Wirksworth. They crush it and screen it and give us the grade that we want to buy, as well as lots of other people that buy their crushed glass from there. And we then use that to blast the car, which we've nearly done. Once that's done, we will then zinc metal spray all of the underbody. Now, going back to the power situation, the zinc metal spraying relies on our workshop compressed air, which obviously we don't have because we've got no power, so I can't do the zinc metal spraying. Once the zinc metal spraying is complete, we then clean the car again, de-dust it all again, take it through into the body shop, do any DA sanding of any areas that we didn't want to blast, and then we will epoxy prime the rest of the body shell, all the areas that weren't zinc metal sprayed. None of that can happen because we don't have three-phase power. So that's where we're at. This job is stalled at this point. You can see the little blue areas, which is where Rich has gone back over. Any areas he's sort of missed while he was blasting, he's just gone back over and marked so that he could go back and blast them. But he can't do that because he has no blaster. He can't do any blasting. So we're a bit dead in the water on that job, and it's quite irritating. The underground cable connection that feeds our site was fitted in 2016, and the cable joint blew up after about a month, was repaired, and it's now 2023 and it's blown up again. So I'm not overly amused by that. Not exactly top cable jointing work. So anyway, that's where we're at with the Churchill project. There was a little bit of lead work finished off before that. We received the 3D printed dummy front grille surround from, I believe that was printed by Rise 3D. We received that item, so we've then trial fitted that in the front and got the lead work to a sort of close approximation of the shape of the final grille using that 3D printed grille surround. So we're somewhere near in terms of that. That was the sort of the last stage prior to getting it ready for blasting. So yeah, that's where we're at on that front. But yeah, nothing really able to happen on that now. That's where we're at. So coming out of there, we are going to walk past our air compressor and have a little look at Interceptor. So we've just made a little start on the Interceptor. And Stu's starting to work on one of the key areas of concern on the Interceptor, which was the door and window fits into the body shell, and trying to work out why they're not that good and resolve making them better. So we're just trying to get to grips with what's going on there, and it's a job to sort of leave Stu in peace and quiet and let him get to grips with that. Stu's many years in crash repair come into their own on this sort of work. I imagine he'll be cursing beneath the skin as we speak, but Stu's very good at analysing why bits don't fit and where the failings in them fitting might be. So we're going to let him have a look at this and work it out. Improvements have been made, so we'll have a look at that next week. We'll be able to have a look. I think we've probably got some bits of footage that probably cover the areas that weren't very good, and hopefully it sounds like Stu's moving forward a little bit with a magic wand of making things fit. So which is pleasing, because a lot of other things aren't moving forward due to the aforementioned problems today. I've been running around in a rather stressed fashion, surrounded by a large number of National Grid employees. But yeah, that's where we're at on Interceptor. So we've only just started, we only just picked that up this morning as of getting the Churchill project out of its bay and into the blast room, with the view to getting that into the body shop. Moving on from that, the E30 project, Sam was just working on this. There is some work being done on the front bumper mountings, getting those to a better state. We're revising how those front bumper mountings were done. We'd had various issues with those mounts, just that they don't really provide us with enough of adjustment, and any very slight damage on the front end of one of these body shells always affects the bumper mountings. And since we have no need to use the original type of mounting, we've decided to revise that now, just from a point of view of giving us a little bit more tolerance regarding the fit of the carbon fibre parts and a bit more adjustability. So the front bumper mountings have been revised. Scott's continuing with the inner wing reinforcement and boxing the inner wing reinforcement into the A posts. Sam has also been working on the modifications to the rear panel to allow the carbon panel fitment, because there's various modifications needed to the ends of that panel to allow the composite panels to be fitted. So that's pretty much where we're at on the Redux. A brief touch on that. E-type, nothing undergoing in fabrication at the moment on that. And then Allegro, Bobby's going blazing ahead with this. He has undertaken the inner quarter panel reinforcement work that's needed on this, getting the reinforcement tubes into here and the revised flange at the top. Adding these, I would call them a side impact bar. They're not really a side impact bar, but they just add slightly more. There wasn't really anything there originally, so the car was quite weak. There was a tiny little pressed strip that went along there that had virtually no strength at all. So we've added a little bit more strength to that area and added a bit more of a reinforcer there. And then Bobby's done the finishing work on the back of the sill, added this structure here, which ties the sill into the inner quarter, the inner sill section and the inner rear wheel arch. And completes that area, and then he's fabricated the rear seatbelt anchorage points, which are pretty much getting there by the looks of things now, and then tied all this structure, this seatbelt mounting structure and C-pillar structure all into the inner quarter panel. So moving forward pretty quickly there now, and I believe he's probably just about at the point of boot lid hinges. Yeah. He's now moved on to getting the boot lid hinges fabricated, because they were revised due to the revisions to the parcel shelf. The hinge mountings were revised to be a little bit stronger, because the original ones were very, very bendy and flexible. The new ones are that Bobby's designed and fabricated are a little bit stronger and tie the parcel shelf into the rear scuttle panel and just strengthen that area up quite a lot, because it really wasn't very strong at all originally. So yeah, that's all progressing really well, moving forward nicely. As I say, in the background, the guys in the body shop, the lights are off in there because they're on the phase that's no good, so I can't really show you in there, but the guys have moved ahead in there with getting the Churchill panels ready. I think we mentioned that briefly last week. They're pretty much now as far on as they can be, as far progressed as they can be without being fitted to the actual body shell, and they need the body shell for that, which they would have today, but for the problems of this morning, meaning that they can't have the body shell today. So it's now probably going to be end of Monday, I would say, before they're going to be able to get that body shell. So that's where we're at with that. So that's the progress on body panels. Additionally to that, Mark has been working on the refurbishment of a variety of parts for really what's more going on in the assembly shop, but Mark has been working on the refurbishment of parts for the AJ16 engine for the Churchill project. We've given our bead blaster a little refresh and put some brand new bead in that and completely cleaned that out, so it's got brand new bead in it, so we're getting some really nice bright aluminium castings out of that. And he's then been making a lovely job of refurbishing parts like the inlet manifold, water pump casing, breather housing, oil filter takeoff housing, I think, and a variety of other aluminium cast housings that are fitted to the AJ16 engine, alongside Adam doing his work on the rest of the engine. And I think that pretty much ties up where we're at with all the projects in here. And there's some other exciting news in the pipeline, but I'm going to leave that for another week. I think we'll defer that to when I can show you a little bit more. So in the meantime, I will hand over to Cal in the assembly shop, and you can catch up with where we're at in there. So see you in a week's time.
So, as I'm assuming you'll have seen in the first half of the video, we've got a bit of a traumatic power situation today. Yeah, so the three-phase, we're basically down a phase on our three-phase, which means, yeah, we've had various disasters, which I imagine Nat will have gone into a moment ago. Thankfully, though, one of the things that's still working is the coffee machine. It basically, depending on which phase of the three phases the different single-phase outlets are in here, depends on whether they're working or not. However, now I think if this had gone down, then that would have caused absolute chaos. So let's go and have a look in the darkness. Maybe I should just stand here next to the vending machine for the whole video. They say guys still forging ahead in the darkness with torches. Right, I'm going to go this way first. And almost actually looking quite moody, lurking in the dark, is a new project. So this is, as you will no doubt recognise, a Audi Quattro, UR Quattro as they tend to be known. And this is our latest project. So what we've done so far is a lot of scanning work. The plan with this project is we've got it here so we could do scan work, and then we're going to put it in storage for a while because we know there's a lot of design work to do on this. We're doing quite a radical redesign of the body shape in carbon panels, and there's quite a lot of interior design stuff to do as well. But as a starting point for the project, we wanted to 3D scan the whole shell, and we also wanted to do that at various ride heights. So we've done a complete 3D scan. We've done it with the wheels off, hubs on stands. So one of our first ports of call will be to basically model the wheel size that we want on the car, put them in the CAD on the hubs, so and then we can kind of build the bodywork around that wheel size. But also, because of that, we need a representation of the wheels at full bump travel and at full lock. So we've also got scans of the hubs at those with everything kind of right up in the arches, so we can check for wheel clearance at full bump and full lock. Which consequently is why it is now absolutely on its arse, as they say, because the easiest way for us to do that was basically to roll it outside and let Bobby gas the springs off and then just let it drop onto its bump stops and then bring it back in, put it on stand so we could do that. So consequently it's now rolling around on its bump stops until the next phase, at which point we'll get it back in the workshop, strip it down, blast the shell and see what horrors lurk underneath. I imagine, although it's got quite a shiny paint job on it, I imagine there'll be plenty of horrors underneath. It's kind of an unfinished project. I don't know the exact history of the car, but it's had some pretty dubious looking repairs done underneath, a reasonably shiny paint job, and then it looks like there was various bits of mechanical work that are kind of half finished on it. So it's certainly not an operational car as it stands, although it is a 20 valve, which is not particularly common in UR Quattro circles. However, it's highly likely that engine won't be retained, but I won't allude to that anymore at the moment. We'll leave it at that and we'll see this project progress as we go through it. If I do a little bit of a loop, briefly pausing on the XJC, so I've just been working through a bit of a rework on the central control panel where the heater controls are. I think I mentioned before the knobs kind of shattered on them, and I've now we've modelled some new switches which replicate the original that are going to be machined in black acetal. But while we're doing that, we wanted to revisit the audio system in the car, and that same panel that has the heater controls on also has the head unit in it. So we're fitting a sort of small, it's a Jaguar Heritage, I think, sell the unit. They also, Porsche Classics, I think, do the same unit. I can't remember who it's made by, but basically a lot of resto mod type people use it. It's got a small touchscreen and it's got nav in there. It's not the best unit in the world, I have to say, because it's only a very small display on it. But on a car where there was not a plan to put a big screen in the dash, it certainly gives you nav and modern functionality in quite a pleasing looking package that works really well with the interior on this car. So that's going in that panel at the same time, so I've been remaking that panel. If we scoot round here, tell you what, one plus of the lack of lighting is normally we battle with these lights here dazzling the camera. Well, we haven't got that problem today. E-Type, James has essentially now finished the power steering plumbing arrangement that he was on with last week. He's moving forward with a couple of other avenues now. It's just been making up the mount for the air conditioning dryer. The air conditioning plumbing is going to be one of the next things. So air conditioning compressor is going to be down here. And this is where some of the sort of forward thinking before comes back into play. We already 3D scanned the whole engine and the whole front of the chassis. Now, it was only when we were doing the alternator mount, but when you already got the scanner there, it kind of makes sense to scan the whole lot. And then you never know when that's going to become useful. So at this point, we wanted to do the aircon compressor. The exhaust manifolds aren't fitted, and it's a bit of a pain to fit them. You have to take this rocker cover off, and I think you have to take the torsion bar out on this side. And so I said to George, well, we've already got a scan of the engine and the chassis on this, haven't we? He said, yeah, so all we need to do is scan the exhaust manifolds and put them on in the model, and then we've got an exact representation of the space we've got down here, and we can also use the scan of the engine to start designing the bracket for the aircon compressor. So yeah, that's the sort of direction we're going with on this at the minute, is air compressor mounting, getting the alternator mounted. Obviously, as I say, the dryer's in there, and then we can start working on the routing for all the air conditioning pipe work on that. Right, escorts. So we've had a load of billet parts through this week from Andy, Concept 303. He's got a load of other bits that he's actually on with machining at the minute, but the things that come through this week are the caps for the dry sump tank, the caps for the screen wash fill and brake and clutch reservoir. Now we've machined them. There's a couple of details worth mentioning. On the brake and the screen wash fill are vented caps. So they've got a little drilling in them, and then we have like a female thread up inside the cap that we put a little sintered brass filter into, essentially so crap doesn't get blown out through the cap, it just gets caught in there and drains back in. And then the dry sump tank cap has got a little female thread inside it, which we're going to make a machine dipstick that threads into that female thread on the inside of the cap. So basically you take the cap off and there's a dipstick on the back of it. And they've all been machined such that there's an external O-ring on the cap which does the sealing, which goes down inside a bore on the tank itself. But then the bit that actually butts up, and I think I talked about this previously actually, is literally aluminium on aluminium. So they always tighten to the same position, which means that when we engrave into the caps what they do, they'll all be at the same angle every time you tighten them. So the writing or logo will always be straight. So that's that. The centre console, there's like a piece that goes around the gear shifter, which has got 3 holes for the headlight switch and the heated front and rear screens. They're here, and the bezel that goes around the volume control on the centre console. So I'm just waiting on there's like the biggest part basically of the centre console, which is the tray where you can put your phone. It's got a USB socket in the front. It's also got the isolator button in it. I'm still waiting for those trays, which are being machined at the minute. But talking about the isolator actually has just made me think of some of the stuff Adam's been on with. So he's been doing the battery cabling on Project 1, which kind of starts in the boot where the battery is and goes via the isolator, which is an ECU master isolator that we're using, which is CAN bus control. So it's on the CAN bus along with the engine ECU, the PDM and some other things, which means we can connect up to that as part of the diagnostic connections. And one of the useful features of that, as well as being able to isolate the battery, is that we can see the overall current draw on the system, literally at the battery. And there are some other useful features. So it'll isolate if the current goes over a certain amount. So let's say you short the battery cable out onto something further forward in the car, it'll kill the system completely. But also we can do some programming. Because it can feed the current draw to the PDM and engine ECU, we can actually do a logic programming where it starts to pull out certain electrical devices if the overall current goes higher than a certain amount. So let's say, we could set a threshold whereby if the overall current draw starts to get too high, it can pull unnecessary things, like it might ramp down the compressor speed on the electric air conditioning compressor or something like that to sort of preserve some of those amps. So yeah, that's in, and then the battery cable's been run, which comes over the arch, down the sill, up to the PDM under the dash. Then there's another cable from there to the battery pass-through stud on the bulkhead, and then from there to the starter motor and the alternator. So battery cable going in. And then we've been getting Project Kuma up to the same speed as Project 1 in terms of plumbing. So Adam's been getting in the brake and clutch plumbing that goes in behind the dash from the pedal box through to the bulkhead and to the reservoirs, finishing off the remaining plumbing underneath. And James has been on with polishing the rear light unit. So I think we showed him already, but we've machined our own rear lamp housings for it, which have like a generic available new bulb holder, so we could use connectors that go straight in rather than just spade terminals on there. And they're a nice new unit, and they kind of quarter turn into the housings. But one thing we wanted to do just before those housings go for anodizing is just polish the sort of reflector area around the bulb. So James has been on with polishing those, which are looking very nice indeed. George has been on with the machine door handles, basically doing a complete mock-up build of the handle, trying it in the car. We've got a modification to do on the latches, where the link rod attaches to lock and unlock the latch from the key. So what we've done is we've got new lock barrels in the push button on the driver's door handle. And George has done a sort of double locking system whereby when you turn the key it engages a pin into a slot, which means you can't press the button. Physically, you can't press the button, as well as pulling a link rod, which locks the actual latch mechanism. So I just wanted to get all that in place and trial all that before the parts go away to be anodised. So there's another area of progress. Heater controls. It's rare that I have to use this, but I seem to be having. It must be, maybe I'm normally powered by the lighting. I must be solar powered or something. So I'm really struggling today. Heater controls. So I think he's certainly in on that car. I think they might be in on both. We did these machined panels to mount the vintage air heater controls in. I wanted to do something that was just a little bit different to the standard vintage air panel. So I had Bruce Holder do the laser engraving on those, do just a prettier version of the direction and sort of temperature logos, if you like, on those panels, but they're all fitted now, ready to connect up. I think we showed the Project 1 dashpad being made quite a while ago. It's an aluminium panel that sits on the top half of the dash. It gets wrapped in leather, which I think that one's actually done now. We're waiting for it back from Dean at the minute. But he couldn't make two the same because the dashes are actually quite a bit different on the two cars. Because the two customers have got very different driving positions, when we did the trial seating with them both, we found that the instrument cluster had to be a lot lower on Kuma. Basically, the steering wheel was a lot lower in the car. The person sat a lot further back, lower down. And because the steering wheel's lower down, obviously we've got to drop the instrument cluster to still be able to see the gauges through the wheel. So it's really, when you look at it, it's actually really obvious because the steering column goes through the dash on Project 1 and it's actually under the dash on Project Kuma. And consequently the instrument binnacle's maybe 1.5 inches lower. So that dash top fascia panel is actually different because the cutout for the instrument binnacle is a lot lower in the dash. So Thomas has been just making that up. So that's done, ready to be leathered as well on that car, although we're still discussing final leather choices on that. The screen wash tanks. So I mentioned earlier about the screen wash fill tank in the engine bay, and that then fills a much bigger tank, which is in the footwell, which kind of has a double purpose as a passenger footrest. So they've been fitting up the screen wash pumps onto those, getting them mounted in there. We've got some protective film over them at the minute so they don't get scratched, although they will eventually have like skateboard grip tape over them, which is going to have the round holes for where we've done the punched swaged holes in the tanks cut out. I was contemplating getting them lasered just to make sure. I mean, we've done it before. I think we did it on Gordon's car and we just used a round punch to punch the holes out. But given that we've already got the CAD for the tanks, I'm tempted to just see if we can actually laser cut those, which would be nice. But anyway, we'll hopefully have light here again next week and we'll see you then. Perfect weekend to go in the shop and get yourself Christmas presents for someone if you want to. So we've got loads of stock of hoodies, beanies, mugs, drinks bottles, t-shirts, the whole lot, and we've done a little Christmas bundle in there as well. So, well, I haven't got a mug, all prepared in this way as well this week. It's generally a disaster, but to make up for it, please go and buy our merchandise in the shop, and I'll see you next week.